Hi all, we're going to take a look at the fishing pole trap today. It's a very interesting trap which can occur from the Berlin defence. So you play the standard move e5 as if you're going to play a solid opening to e4. You're protecting your pawn with the knight, so classic play here revolving around e5. This is like the arm wrestle kind of metaphor, where every move from both sides is to do with e5, putting more and more pressure on e5. But after bishop b5, statistically the most common move in this Ruy Lopez is actually to play a6, and I think there's no real harm in playing this trap with the inclusion of a6 here. But I think the fishing pole is officially sort of being used in conjunction with knight f6 here, so I think a6 is an interesting move as well, just to play knight f6 with the same idea. Okay, let's assume you play knight f6, which is like the Berlin defense. So a lot of top Russian grandmasters have been playing this, very solid, and usually dull sterile positions would emerge. But you're not going to play it with knight takes e4. You're going to play a pesky knight move instead. Now the mechanics of this, I'm often using in blitz games. The mechanics of using the rooks is quite fascinating as part of understanding this trap. Okay, so say white's knee-jerk reaction, especially in the blitz game, and especially in the bullet game, which I've been playing quite a lot of recently. So say their knee-jerk reaction is to play h3. Instead of moving the knight, no, you're not going to sacrifice it unsoundly or anything on f2. Well, you are going to play h5 supporting it. So it's as if you're literally putting a metaphorical fishing rod out here, and here is the bait. This knight is being used as a bait, and you're catching fish, which is an unfortunate pun because fish is a derogatory term for weak player in the States. In the United Kingdom it's like bunnies. So anyway, so you're putting out the fishing pole to catch a few fish. Okay, and now say they do take on g4, so that's the critical splat line. So you take on g4, and in fact you already have a winning position here. So this would be a quick point scorer. And as I say, the mechanics of it I am actually using in blitz games in the tango variation, especially against d4, which I'll try and show you later on in the video, because I like using the rooks like this for an early king assault, if possible, if white dares to take the knights on g4. Okay, so here, why is white lost, you may ask? Well, let's say retreating the knight, you just play queen h4, and you have a queen and rook battery, so you're threatening a mate on h1. So white tries to make an evacuation plan against this, say, because g3 is just queen h2 mate or queen h1 mate. So say white's only evacuation plan, because the rook here actually can't move, is to play f3. You've got a choice between a mate in 2 and a mate in 3 here already, or a forced mate with bishop c5, or the more beautiful move. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 5 seconds here. The most crushing move. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's g3. So that seals the white king's fate, because it can't come out to f2. So any move next is just queen h1 mate. So it could be a very quick points winner, and that's very good if you're playing on chess cube bullet, especially because you can win some qubits quickly with this system. for an opponent who's half asleep on a bullet game, you just play h5, they snap up the bait, you mate them on the h file. Okay, let's say they didn't move the knight and they take on c6. You just simply take your time to recapture the bishop, knowing that the knight can't possibly move anywhere without allowing this mating pattern. I mean, knight e5 is again the same mating pattern. You again set up the battery of rook and queen very rapidly, thanks to the opponent. And again, f3, you just answer with g3. You know, it's not just queen h2 threatened. So even if they did try knight g4, which you've got bishop g4 anyway, you just play queen h1 mate. So h2 and h1 just mating again. Now, okay, let's have a look at something else though. If white's recommendation really is to try and ignore that knight, So let's say they play a seemingly natural move, rook e1. The problem is the knight's justified here because the knight is actually eyeing these sensitive squares f2 and h2. So you can continue aggressively with a decent position with bishop c5. And now if the disastrous move d4 is played, which has the idea, this bishop is not protecting the knight at the moment, so it has the idea of unleashing an attack on the knight. So you just take knight takes d4, and you're giving the opponent this sense of delight that they're winning a piece, because knight takes d4 and they're exposing an attack on your knight. So they'll be probably quite excited after knight d4. But now, a bit like that Morris Smith kind of gambit we looked at, it's these problems with f2, they're also combined with h2 here. So you just play the move queen h4, and okay, you're a piece down here, and white can actually try and protect h2. So they play knight f3, giving up f2, and they might think, oh, that's not a big deal, because bishop f2 they move their king and they're still attacking your queen, and queen f2 they might not think it's a big deal. But the thing is, queen f2 is a big deal here. So queen takes f2 check. Can you spot the mating pattern if I give you 5 seconds? Okay, it's the classic smothered mate, queen g1. Any move, any capture to take, you just play knight f2, smothered mate. So it's all looking glamorous at the moment, and the thing is, if you run this variation through an engine, actually, well, Stockfish, let's say, I've got the latest Stockfish, it will give white with a massive advantage here, not through playing rook e1, but let's look at a more critical variation. Okay, h3 still, but here not taking the knight. Say white plays now a more sensible plan, and tries to get this the centre going with c3. You see, c3 is sporting that d4 square, so white's trying to repel your bishop c5s. And I was checking this out, and I think, how can we possibly, with the best will in the world, justify this knight on g4? So this is why this trap is a bit perhaps bankrupt, in that it gives you a bad position if white plays sensibly with this c3 plan. Well, actually, in this position, there's a couple of games in the chessgames.com database with a6. One of them continued with bishop c5, and I think that was a Brian Wall game, and the other one with queen f6, and both games actually black won, funny enough. So this variation's got 100% on chess games from the not so big game sample of 2 games. But I've been checking myself, and I'm wondering, actually, black has a curious plan as well. Bishop d6, don't laugh too loudly. So bishop d6, now say d4. You see, this is a bit tangoish, because I don't mind my knight in the tangoing around to the queen side, or even being forced to retreat if the centre is closed. So say queen e7 here, it's typical Nimzovich overprotection of e5. So say white closes the centre, you just play knight d8, and now here comes my point about justifying this knight on g4. How can you possibly justify it? Well, in some games which have been successful in this variation, black just combines this knight with an avalanche of pawns with, say, f6 and g5. So say white does play bishop g5, you play f6, which is one of the only moves, and now you play bishop c5, say. So you're putting back the pressure on f2, restraining that rook. Okay, you could give your bishop a pigeonhole at any time with a6 as well. But let's play d6. Okay, so knight a3. And let's say bishop d7 to try and keep control of the b5 square, and if knight b5, you've always got rook c8 as well. But say knight c4. Now black would actually be doing alright here with my analysis with g5, and now the point is revealed. So you've got this potential pawn avalanche, and you've still got this annoying bishop on f2. So say queen g7, and after bishop e2, you chase the knight, and now I've been looking at knight takes f2 in this position. So after takes, you can lose 2 pieces of rook if you really want, but g3, sorry, the threat of g3 with g4 now threatening g3 is actually advantageous for black. so say in this position, if white moves the knight, you play g3, and say white doesn't, you just win the exchange. Basically, you're capturing back your piece, so you'll be the exchange up. So that's an interesting variation if white's playing sensibly and he wanted to survive the position in the blitz game. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is any good for black. I'm saying that you might consider a6, and maybe, you know, some people have sacrificed the pawn on e5 like a kind of Albin counter gambit kind of strategy, trying to pick e5 up later. But there's another way of playing it. If you don't want to give up e5, just protect e5. It looks terrible with your bishop like that, but it's kind of provocation. Okay, so you can get this pawn avalanche going to try and justify this pesky knight on g4. Now I want to show you the games which I've been picking up wins with the same game mechanics, this rook on the h4 and knight g4s in the tango. So forget e4. I'm going to try and give you 2 for the price of 1. So in the tango, so knight c6 is a very interesting opening sometimes. So say white plays c4, you tango your knight to the queen side, and what I've been doing in a lot of games is a kind of fishing pole mechanics. So we get this position, and white's got a lead in development here, and all black's done so far is develop pieces on the queen side. And here I've been playing in a lot of blitz games just knight g4 anyway, so same mechanics as the fishing pole, and scoring quite heavily actually with after h3 just h5. Rather cheeky. It's just very annoying to play this for someone to have time to defend, because now not only you've got your pesky knight, the knight's brother is there as well, so you can get in things like knight h4. And if white really wants to kind of try and avoid taking the knight, then after knight h4, say bishop g5, you've got knight f3 and queen g5, it starts to get a bit risky, this position, to play. As I say, especially in a blitz game, they might try and get rid of your bishop, but you can pigeonhole it on a7. It's just really incredibly easy to play position for black here, with, you know, the emphasis on the dark square pressure against white's king and coming in on the dark squares. And I've been winning, you know, very interesting, very easy to play positions from the tango. So with the same mechanics of using a pesky knight on g4, it's an annoying tactical strategy. And you sometimes get that shared strategy in other openings with white, where white's using the h-pawn. And in the UK it's often been called like the 160 hack attack, where you use your h-pawn and just try and rip open the h-file and mate, you know, the opponent on h7 or h8 with a rook and queen battery. So the mechanics is actually quite common. It's widespread in a number of tactical games, especially at the club level. Now I've given you a lot in this video. Let's go back to the main splat variation though in e4 to think about. And we're saying that the position is not completely lost, but with careful play from white here, either like, well, c3 is probably quite critical, but and white should be okay. But if they do take, then they go splat basically. They're going to lose material. Say they did move the knight, so queen h4, and then you're mating. So this is the total splat line. Is if white's really moving the knight, he's just getting mated. Okay, so the interesting line which I looked at with this h3, let's look at that again as well, just briefly. So c3, bishop d6. So even though the engines give it a bad evaluation, black doesn't even have to lose the e-pawn, and can actually just try and justify that knight by this pawn avalanche. So if you can get this pawn avalanche going, trying to keep this bishop on that diagonal, on that sensitive f2 square, then you should be fine. You're actually going to be better in this position. So you're going to be the exchange up. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.